So as I mentioned in the last lesson, we're going to start building up the ground level areas. So we'll use kind of a mossy texture, and we're also going to use this kind of gravel porous rock. So I've just exported this into Maya. So let's go into Maya. And so this is the shader network that we have so far with our two textures we've set up and our curvature masking the two. So let's just grab that. It's here, the gravel porous rock. So I'm going to just middle mouse, bring it down. And it has got the maps connected to it. It's just that we've just pulled it down in that manner that you can see the textures all attached there. So let's create another mix material, AI mix shader. And let's take shader 1 will be our mix shader 1, and shader 2 will be our porous rock. And what we're going to do, let's just take with mix shader 2, let's just graph network the whole thing, because then we'll get our gravel. Here it is. So because we want this to be in our kind of low-lying areas, we can use another one of our masks to sort of put it down there. So if we could use a water mask or a debris mask. I think it would be nice to use the debris mask for that actually, or we could use an inverted height mask. So let's just try out the debris mask for now and see how far that gets us. So let's put that into the mix shader, and let's make sure this is tiling again. So let's tile this by about 50 again, and I think that should do it. So let's close this and just see what happens. Again, we might need to use some noise maps to help break up that tiling, but at the moment let's just go ahead and get this layered up. So far no difference. I think we may have forgotten to apply this. So assign viewport selection. Let's try again. Again, not immediately obvious, so we just need to make sure that our mask is doing its job. So let's bring the hypershade back and create another standard surface and pop it in instead of the ground porous rock, just to make sure we're getting a functional mask. So you can see, yeah, it is working, but we're only getting it sort of in very small pockets, which isn't what we want in this area. So we could use that mask for something else later on, but we want something that's going to push that a bit more. So let's take the height mask, and maybe we could invert it. So create an AI color correct, input the color. Let's just bring this so you can see. Invert, and then let's drop that into, let's create the red channel into our mix. Now let's close that and have another look at our render. That's working pretty well, perhaps too well. So now what we need to do is we'll just grab an AI range and we'll just push some of these values back, because it's a little bit excessive. So let's just stop that render. So AI range, out red into the mix, and let's just make this smaller, and we'll just open up the IPR and do this interactively. Okay, let's just increase the input min. Okay, and then increase the max a little bit there. It's going to be a juggling act between the two. Good, something like that. It's going to be a good mask. So now let's just drop the porous rock into, not the porous rock, what am I talking about? We want the gravel. Oh, that is the gravel. So let's drop the gravel into our mix shader instead of the standard surface. Okay. And that's looking all right. That's looking okay. What we can perhaps do is take the albedo and knock it down. If you go onto the actual file node, we can reduce the exposure or increase it. But let's just drop it back a little bit. So that will do the job there. Now what we want to do is introduce some sort of patches of grass or foliage or whatever. So the first thing we can do with that is actually just once again turn to our Quixel bridge and let's find another. We've got Nordic moss, that looks quite good. Nordic moss it is. Let's export that into our scene. Good. Now we're on the second mix shader, so let's just call that base rock mix and graph the material network for that, and then create another AI mix shader, feed the base rock mix into that, call the next mix shader, call it foliage mix 01. We may need to do multiple layers, but for now we'll start with that. Grab the Nordic moss, middle mouse, and drop that into shader 2. And now we're going to use another one of our masks. So let's go back into our masks and see what we've got. So you would assume that, you know, foliage is going to be sort of centered around areas of where water will be. So let's just try out our water mask. The debris mask is in a very similar area, so we might need the debris mask. It's a bit stronger. But I think for now we'll try the water mask and see what it does. So let's create an AI range node to start off with, because it's going to be needed, I think. And then just drop the red channel and select the height field again. And then let's just apply our foliage mix. And once again with the, if we graph network if we select our foliage mix, graph network the material, we'll have access to our Nordic moss settings. So we want to be able to tile it again. So let's just tile it 40 by 40 and see where that gets us. Let's render. And actually about now would be a good time to save, so we'll save in a second before we lose all of our progress. Yeah, with the water mask it's really weak, so let's increase that strength of the AI range, but it's going to need some help, so let's close that and bring back Hype Shade. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think if we just swap that water mask out with the debris mask, I think that will do the trick. Debris mask was already stronger, and then if we open up our renderer and start rendering, let's just tweak the AI range as we go so we can see what's happening. So let's just dial this in. Ah, okay, right. Okay. So we're going to need to really have a really low number for the input max. So let's say 0.05. A bit lower. 0.01. Let's increase the output max. Yeah, that's better. And then the output min, just dial that in a little bit. We're going to just have to tweak these 4 settings till we get like a result that we're quite happy with. But that's not a bad look. It's working. So something like that, that's given us some nice sort of pockets of foliage. But we're just going to want to, I think one is we're going to want to break those up to start off with, because we've not used any noise maps to break up our sort of moss texture. And 2, I think if we add another one on top of this just to give us some more detail, perhaps we can use the sediment mask following this. So in the next lesson, let's grab our sediment mask and continue on shading and just build up some more layers to this shader network.